Ahoy, everyone, and welcome to the Genesis of the Doctor podcast, where we're taking a journey through the time and space of the history of Doctor Who. I'm Tris.
And I'm Joy.
So, last time we introduced the podcast here in our episode 0, basically going over what to expect for the series, as well as our first episode today, where we're focusing on the very first serial of Doctor Who, An Unearthly Child. So, this was honestly a really interesting start to it all, because they really kind of throw you in pretty quickly.
Yeah, they do.
Like, I really didn't know anything about this episode going into it outside of I had watched An Adventure in Time and Space, I guess technically documentary dramatization that BBC put out like 10 years ago. I had watched that, so I had the general idea there, but I didn't realize like just how much they actually put into setting up who Ian and Barbara were, more so than Susan and the Doctor.
Yeah, I kind of like that, how like the Doctor's the last one we meet out of our main characters, which is a bit interesting.
Yeah, like it was definitely interesting. Like, I know the iconic shot of like the shadow of like the IM foreman, like the junkyard, and I know that Susan is kind of the more innocent one here, and the Doctor's kind of portrayed a bit more of a rude old man, which we'll get into the specific character breakdowns, but I thought we would actually open with them. So the fact that we didn't actually kind of surprised me.
And the Doctor's basically the villain in the first episode, which is funny. Because he's like psychologically tormenting Ian and Barbara and all that stuff. Yeah.
And then, and we'll get into it with the whole breakdown of our characters in a little bit, but it's also interesting to see, while the Doctor kind of plays that somewhat antagonistic role, Ian kind of takes the role of the protagonist.
Yeah, he does. It shows that, like, from the very beginning, they were basically always thinking that the companions would be your primary protagonists. And then the Doctor's, like, there to tell a story with the companion.
And it makes sense, too, because, I mean, the essence of the show really is you're seeing time and space through the companion's eyes. That's really it. Or whoever the stand-in for the companion is, you know, in the future, when there aren't necessarily companions for specific episodes and there's one-off characters. But it's about kind of seeing the adventure through their eyes most of the time.
Yeah.
But I think it's fascinating to see how quickly it all got started. Like, the very first episode is very focused on introducing these teachers concerned about their student. And I actually think they do a really good job at setting up how very clearly Susan is different.
Yeah.
And why they're concerned about her. I can't say I exactly approve of them deciding to stalk her.
Yeah, that's a bit weird.
But it's clearly from a place of concern, at least for Barbara's case it is. I think Ian's, it's purely curiosity.
they at least mentioned that, like, Barbara tried to contact the family and then went to the location and was like, there's no house here. What's going on here? So, like, there is a reason as to why they stalk her.
Yeah, like, there is. Like, at least from Barbara's perspective, it really does come from a place of concern, and that conveys very well. Ian's really does just kind of come across as, well, Barbara's getting worked up about this, and I must admit I'm curious too, so I might as well come along for the ride.
Yeah, pretty much.
But then it really gets started, like, really quickly. Like, after they meet the Doctor and Susan and enter the TARDIS for the first time, they're immediately thrown into the past, and the way all of that plays out is so different from how we would have any Doctor Who episode get structured now.
Yeah. And they also mentioned, like, in order to get back to the present, they need to know where they're coming from. Which is, like, they don't really follow that rule anymore.
The Doctor just gets a much better understanding of the TARDIS later on.
Yeah, pretty much.
But no, like, the fact that the first adventure we ever see in the TARDIS, because obviously it's not the very first adventure ever. The very first adventure we see in the TARDIS being sent back to, you know, the Stone Age, and there's cave people, and the whole thing is they want fire. If that was done today, you would probably see something of the the doctor teaching someone how to make fire, but turns out this person actually has ill intent with the fire, and now they want to kill the entire clan, so now the doctor has to stop them. And, if I teach you how to use this, make sure you use it for good, or something like that. Some sort of speech as they see him off in the TARDIS afterwards. That's how it would be nowadays. Yeah. There was not that resolution here. It really was, we're trapped here. We can't properly communicate with these people. They don't understand us the way we want them to. We just need to get out. And it's about escaping.
Yeah, pretty much. There is a moment where it's like, after we give them fire, maybe we regret it, but it's only very briefly. Right. Then they're just like, hey, we're just going to put these skulls on the fire. That'll scare them enough.
I kind of loved that, though. Like, it makes sense. This is the people that really don't, understand fire. Like, there's a lot of things they don't understand about the world, and it's silly how it worked. But I actually think it was a rather well done story at setting up how all of our 4 TARDIS passengers, I guess if you want to put it that way, everyone in the TARDIS, how they react to this panicking situation, how they are in a crisis, basically.
Yeah. It's also nice how, the first serial here it showcases, the time travel. And, the second serial is called The Daleks, so we kind of know that's going to be the space travel. So they immediately get your 2 spots there. I found it a bit interesting how, we're going to get into breakdowns of characters, but I found it interesting how the Doctor is, he doesn't really want to help the people. It's Ian that really forces them to help people. So it's interesting to see, you see the Doctor before he is at all what we know him to be today.
And obviously, rules that we learn about the Doctor from after this point could always explain that, the whole thing with Time Lords of non-interference.
Yeah.
Not wanting to be involved could explain that. But,
well, I mean he did pick up a rock and wanted to beat Zod to death.
Yeah,
and then Ian had to stop him.
That is the thing. That is the thing. That was kind of shocking, actually, seeing that he was going to do, thinking of doing that. I was like, wow, Doctor, you're really different right now.
he doesn't even care about human life yet. That'll come later.
Yeah, this is very, very early for the Doctor. But it really goes to show how they're trying to paint Ian and Barbara and Susan compared to the Doctor, because they are while he's helping them for the sake of all of them, he's also very much antagonizing them too, watching them enjoying watching them figure things out and being the smartest one in the room in a very different way than he does in the modern era.
And then at the start, we get the mention that the TARDIS didn't change form, and it's supposed to change form.
Yeah, so I guess this is when it broke. I guess this is when the chameleon circuit broke for the first time. Even though we have strange confusions with that in the future with the modern era, but it gets complicated. That's a whole different thing. Doesn't it all? So let's start actually going through our character breakdowns. I think, because at this point, we kind of touched upon the general structure of the story, and we keep touching upon a bit of stuff with the characters. We'll come back to that. But I think we should just get into them now at this point. So let's start with Susan, because she is the unearthly child. She is kind of the main focus here.
I found it interesting how she's basically playing the role of the Doctor's conscience and everything. Where she's the one that's wanting to help the humans, and the Doctor doesn't really want to. So she's basically the conscience of the Doctor. Which kind of makes me curious to see how this Doctor will act after she's gone. Because I know she leaves during his tenure at some point. So it'll be interesting to see how he evolves alongside her, and then also after she leaves and stuff.
How he learns from his granddaughter,
Yeah. And then they also there's a brief moment where she's or the Doctor says maybe I should just leave you here, and I'll leave. Which is foreshadowing.
Yeah, a little bit. A little bit of foreshadowing just to just how close he really is with her, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I think it's really interesting to see Susan's perspective in all of this, because she is a young kid, even though she's also a Time Lord and also very familiar with all the time and space travel. She is still a kid in all of this.
I like the little scene they had with her picking up a history book and going like, no, that's wrong. This is all wrong. What are you doing?
She's not blending in very well with that, is she?
No, she's not.
I really appreciate though that because you mentioned she kind of embodies the Doctor's conscience. She also just embodies his want for adventure that he gets later on.
Yeah.
Because something in the very, very first episode that she does that I love is she wants to read all these books. She wants to learn as much as she can about this era while she's in it. Not just because, she knows what really happened in this history book and that's wrong, but she also just finds it fascinating to learn about the era and try to make not even just make a life there, but understand more about it to, I guess, like further her adventures, her studies, so to say. She's very studious.
Yeah.
And then we see that kind of encapsulated with how intrigued her teachers are by her.
Yeah.
Do we want to focus on Ian or Barbara first, do you think?
Either one's fine, I'd say.
Okay, let's start with Barbara then, because she's the first teacher we get introduced to. And it kind of makes me wonder if the other teachers in the school also react the same way to Susan, or if it's just these two.
Well, I mean, they were the science teacher and the history teacher, so those would be the ones that'd be like the most confused by her, I'd say.
Yeah, it's true. Honestly, they really are. But I really appreciate how from the get-go you can see Barbara as a teacher that like really cares about her students and wants to get to the bottom of what's going on.
Yeah.
But she's also more capable than she lets on. Like,
yeah.
Like she had ideas and things she wanted to do in this first adventure. She kept getting scared and yielding to Ian in a lot of it. But I think she, especially with wanting to help them when they got hurt, the cave people. She actually like was like quick to act basically with all of that.
And they pretty much very quickly become parental figures almost to Susan.
Yeah,
the doctors
they really do.
The doctor's the cranky grandfather, and then they're the parents.
It's definitely true because of how quickly Susan starts going to them for advice too.
Yeah.
And like hearing them out and wanting to kind of help see them lead. I think in this first episode, I do think, or not just first episode, the first serial, I think we do get more of Ian than we do of Barbara in terms of like development and and handling the situation.
Yeah, we certainly do.
I'll transition us to Ian here specifically because, like we said at the very beginning, he's basically the main protagonist here.
Yeah, pretty much. He's the one that makes fire and everything and solves all the problems for the most part. So he's basically...
Yeah, he really does solve all the problems.
He's basically what the Doctor becomes later on in the show.
It makes me wonder if it's this group, Susan, Ian, and Barbara, that really inspire the Doctor to become who he is later. Obviously, we'll see at some point, when eventually these companions leave and new companions join in. But it really does have me curious if these three inspire him, and that's why.
I guess we'll have to see how the character arc ends up going on with the Doctor.
Yeah, it's true. But I think what's so fascinating about Ian's character is how quick he is to actually try to take leadership. Even in positions where the Doctor's clearly in charge, and he's just like, "Who do you think you are right now?" like when he tries to take charge inside the TARDIS, and the Doctor just kind of looks at him, and he's just like, young man, what are you doing?"
Yeah, that was funny.
I don't quite understand how they got knocked unconscious in the TARDIS. It wasn't like really shaking or anything, but
I feel like the rules kind of change about like how stuff works, and maybe it's just like the first time you're in a TARDIS, you're gonna be uncomfortable.
You're gonna have a rough time.
Yeah. Although at the end they're better when they leave, so it's really just that first time because we see them leave. No, that's
why I was confused.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's why I was confused about it, because it wasn't shaking that bad. Like the Doctor and Susan were fine, maybe because they're used to it.
Yeah.
But for Ian and Barbara to get knocked out by it was a little silly, to be honest.
Yeah, it was.
I'm glad, despite everything, the Doctor didn't actually leave them there, but you could tell he was really thinking about it.
Yeah. I mean, he had to go out to figure out where they were so that he could pilot the TARDIS, I guess.
Yeah.
Maybe he would have just left them if he didn't have to do that.
He might have. Let's let's use that to talk about who this Doctor is. You know, we in the modern era, we've seen some elements of this Doctor come back, especially when he came back in the special, played by someone else, of course. But the essence of this Doctor is very, very defining because it's so polarizing compared to who, as modern viewers, who we know the Doctor to be. Not even just modern viewers, even just like the following Doctor after this one is so different. So to see how William Hartnell's first Doctor handles himself and handles everything around him, it's so interesting. And I mean, I think a lot of it might also be from his age, like, you know, the actor, his age and how he's handling situations.
Yeah.
Like, there's definitely a lot of times where you can kind of look at him and it feels like you can see on his face he's trying to remember what he has to say next.
Yeah.
What his next line is.
And he's kind of too old for them to have him be like the Ian archetype where he's like actively doing a bunch of stuff. Right?
Yeah. I think that's why Ian is really taking the lead. Like, the Doctor's the brains here, so to say, and everything going on. Whereas Ian is the one acting on everything, making it all happen.
I feel like if this was my first time watching the show in like 1963, I probably wouldn't like the Doctor very much. But because we're coming at it from the perspective of like we know who the Doctor will become, it's a very interesting thing to see that like this is him before he even cares about humans, and this is him when he wants to just like kill cavemen for no reason. So it's interesting to see like we're going to see the character arc of him becoming who we're used to him being now.
Yeah, and that's basically why we call our podcast The Genesis of the Doctor.
Yeah. we get to see where he starts and then where he goes.
Yeah, we get to see the whole journey from point A to point B, and where we already know where point B is.
Yep.
But I think it's fascinating to see that this is what they chose to do. Like, I know from the Adventure in Time and Space that, at least I'm pretty sure from, unless they, you know, just dramatized that, they originally depicted him as even more antagonistic from the start.
Yeah.
Which, seeing what they went with here, he's already pretty antagonistic.
Yeah,
he's not a villain, of course, but he really he's kind of cheerily for him antagonizing these two because he likes watching them figure it out, and he feels they intruded on his space, therefore they deserved it.
Yeah. And I forgot to mention, but Ian, he is currently the character who has had the longest amount of time from his first and last appearances, because he just reappeared last year in The Power of the Doctor. Well, I should say, which was with the same actor, because technically the first Doctor was also in that episode, but with a different actor.
Yeah, it's specifically the same actor to play the same character, which is impressive, actually.
It's over.
Ian evidently comes along.
It's like almost 60 years.
Curious to see.
59 years.
I'd be very curious to see his point A to point B, like what happened to him in between and all that.
I think he was apparently mentioned in one of the spin-offs, although I haven't watched all those. I think briefly they mentioned Ian and Barbara in the spin-offs and stuff. I think in Class as well, Ian Chesterton was supposed to be like chairman of the board or something of the school.
Well, that makes sense, yeah, because Class is Coal Hill. It is the school. It's the same school.
I think in something they mentioned that he's like still at the school and he's like in charge of it, basically.
Okay. Wow. That's some dedication.
I think it was like chairman of the board or something along those lines.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, that checks out, because if there's one thing we learned about Ian in this first serial, is he's very dedicated to people, especially to helping the kids and other teachers.
Yeah.
Like, this whole thing happens because he decides, well, I'm not doing anything. I'm going to go help Barbara, and I want to figure out what's going on with Susan. That's a dedicated teacher.
Yeah, sure is.
I think overall, though, this gives a great first impression for each of these characters.
Yeah.
We have defining traits for all of them already. We have a very good idea of how they'll handle future situations and how it'll all go. I hope we get a good spotlight for each of them, though. That's kind of my main thing. Like, we've had a lot of spotlight for Ian specifically as like the protagonist, and we've had a lot of spotlight for the Doctor to kind of act up, but I hope we get a proper spotlight for like Barbara and Susan to get their time to shine like properly too.
Yeah, that would be nice. I'm not sure if they do, because I think the actress behind Susan basically said she left because they didn't really do much with Susan. So I'm not sure.
Ah,
But hopefully they get some
well,
development and stuff.
well, at least she's on good terms with the show. So
Yeah.
I remember she went to the 60th anniversary stuff. So like the celebration, the red carpet or whatever, or blue carpet for the TARDIS.
Yeah.
I don't remember what they called it, but she was at the celebration for the 60th anniversary stuff.
Yeah.
Well, normally, as a little note here in our podcast, normally here where we kind of finish our initial thoughts on everything with the serial is where if you have joined our Discord to the Patreon, we would be going to the chat, kind of getting some responses from you guys, seeing what you guys think of each of these, and using those as further talking points. So, as a reminder, if you would like to support us on Patreon, the lowest tier, or passengers as we call them, get into the Discord, where we encourage discussions between episodes about what we're watching, and you'll also get early access to these episodes. And then the higher tier companions, as we call them, will be able to watch live here and talk in the chat with us. And that'll be how we kind of get little bits of input from you guys.
Yep.
But right now, since, we're so early on, we don't really have any of you guys to talk to yet.
Yep.
But in due time, of course. Let's move on to some news in Who. I don't think I'm going to keep calling it that. But
Yeah.
Now, taking a step back from the 1960s and into, well, I guess actually technically the 1950s. Modern Doctor Who, set in the 1950s, it looks like. So basically, I'll give the small rundown that I know, and then Joy, I'll toss it to you because you might know more about the situation than me. But basically, in current Doctor Who, they are rather ahead on filming. Like, we had the Christmas special with Ncuti Gatwa and Millie Gibson, but not only have they already filmed the first season that's airing in a few months, they're also in the middle of filming his second season. And notably, Millie Gibson as Ruby Sunday seems to be done already. She's out after her first season. And we've seen from set photos who's very likely to be the new companion, played by Virata Sethu. And it looks to be set in the 1950s. We've seen Ncuti Gatwa in a rather fun-looking suit with a bow tie, and Virata Sethu in a bright yellow dress. And yeah, that's my understanding of the situation. Joy, is there more for us to get into with all that you know about?
I think that's basically it. Like, they haven't officially announced anything, but it certainly seems like, obviously, we've seen the set photos, so we know the supposed replacement is absolutely on the show, at least in some capacity. It is weird that they haven't really commented on it. Although, tabloids were trying to make it seem like it was very drama-filled, but then Ncuti Gatwa put out on Instagram that like he supports Millie Gibson and stuff, so it doesn't seem like anything weird is going on there. It seems like it's just a matter of, like, she was supposed to be a one-season companion, because we know in Russell T Davis's Who, every single season, either the Doctor or the companion changed. So it certainly makes a lot of sense for it's happening again. And like,
yeah, it's just fascinating coming off of so many eras, so many years of the Doctor or companion was around for arguably too long at times.
Yeah. Stephen Moffat and Chris Chibnall both liked keeping companions around for a long time. Except for Bill. It's different. But that's because Moffat left Bill at the end of Bill's season.
Yeah, poor Bill. There was something refreshing back then about a one-season companion. Yeah. But in the middle of all of them, I wish she had longer. Anyway, though.
I think it makes sense to have Ruby only around for a season because, like, her story is so heavily tied to being a parallel to the Timeless Child. So it makes sense to me that they're going to try to just get through that in a season and deal with all that, and then he can go and tell another story.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember hearing people say that she's still in the second season. She's just not.
Well, I think they said she's in like 4 of the episodes or something, so she's going to be in like half of the second season.
Okay.
So it might be that like she leaves halfway through the season, or it might be like she leaves at the end of the first season, but then she comes back like Martha did.
That's what I'm thinking. Like, she comes back like Martha. Like, she and the Doctor leave on good terms. She just doesn't want time and space to be her whole life.
Yeah. Because I mean, she cares a lot about
she
her
gets
family,
her answers.
so she probably just wants to go back to being with her family.
Mm-hmm. Or, hopefully nothing like Martha, where something bad happens and then it makes her choose to stay with her family. Hopefully nothing like that happens again.
I think really...
Just because...
It's just...
That'd be sad.
I think the issue is just that, like, since they're filming 2 seasons in a row, we're just getting all this news a lot faster than we would expect to get it. And I'm kind of theorizing that the reason why they're doing 2 seasons right now is so that Russell T Davies can start making spin-offs, and then, like, they don't have to film a new season of the regular show for, like, a year and a half or something. So he can get to work on starting up spin-offs, and then he can go back to the main show after they've been started. That's kind of my theory, is what's going on here. Because we'll have two years worth.
That makes a lot of sense.
They won't have to film until, like, late 2025 after this.
Yeah.
and
that
we
really
know
does give them time to
they're
film
starting
spin-offs.
they're starting up the Hooniverse. So, we know they're going to make them.
And actually, we know one of those spin-offs. There was that whole thing a little while back with there was that like filming that filming block that they like reserved for sometime in March, I believe, for, of all things, a spin-off about the Sea Devils, if I remember correctly.
I hadn't heard about that.
I don't remember the full details about it, but basically it had Russell T Davies and Julie Gardner involved, and the name had something to do with the Sea Devils, so it was very obviously a Doctor Who spin-off filming. And I remember the internet blowing up a little bit because why is the first spin-off we're getting a spin-off about the Sea Devils? Like, well, it could be a mini-series. Like, maybe, I know, like, years ago, over the past couple of years, there have been rumors of a unit, like a unit spin-off series happening. And I wonder if instead of, like, a proper spin-off series, what if it's just a bunch of, like, mini-series that involve unit and other things? So maybe this Sea Devils spin-off is actually a mini-series about unit and the Sea Devils, just as an example.
I think that'd be an interesting thing to just be like, here's a mini-series about unit dealing with the Sea Devils, and then here's another mini-series about unit dealing with something else. That'd be an interesting way to do it.
Because I don't think... I don't feel like we're going to be getting so many spin-offs that are all going to be like 8 episode or 8 to 10 episode, like full season, multi-season shows like we did before. Some, sure, especially as the Hooniverse as the Hooniverse kind of blows up more. But I don't think we're going to be jumping straight into all that. I think miniseries with unit might be the best way to kind of handle it, because that's kind of like what they do with the audio series already.
Yeah, and like they already did Tales of the TARDIS as well. So
True.
like,
yes, they did.
They might do like little spin-offs where you get to see like an old Doctor come back and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Plus, miniseries might be a better way for some of like the older companions, the people that maybe can't quite film as long or do as active things, to come back for a bit, because it's not as intensive as a full season show. It's like a 3-episode miniseries kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. I'm hoping spin-offs we get are the 8th Doctor and the Fugitive Doctor, because I would love to see more.
Oh, I really hope so. We need more both of them. I think that would be so good.
The Fugitive Doctor definitely needs more stuff, because we haven't seen enough of her.
100%.
And then the 8th Doctor, he got one movie. He could get more.
Thankfully, he has a lot of audio stories.
That's true.
So he has material as the Doctor, just not on the TV screen.
They've done comics.
But I definitely hope
they've done comics with the Fugitive Doctor. But I don't think she's ever done Big Finish.
Not yet.
One of the comics for the Fugitive Doctor is actually very relevant, because she ends up going to the exact same place that the TARDIS was on in An Unearthly Child. She goes to that same junkyard. It's like at the end of the comic, they have her leave, and then it's like 1 year later, here's the TARDIS coming back.
Oh my god, the TARDIS remembered.
Yeah. So it's like, she's like,
that's fine.
I think she mentions like, I don't know if I'll ever come back here. And then it's like 1 year later, here's the TARDIS coming back, and it's a totally different Doctor now.
That's so funny.
I think that might have been really the free comic day comic they did. Like, there's like a free comic book day, and I think that was what the Fugitive Doctor one was. She also had like
that sounds really cool.
A mini series where it was like when she was still working with Division, essentially.
Right.
and that was kind of
Yeah,
explaining
that makes
why
sense.
she stopped working with them.
Oh, okay. That's handy. I like supplemental material like that.
Yeah.
We're, to go back to the actual news bits that we were talking about earlier, though, because I think we definitely got away from it a
we
little
did.
bit, which is okay. Varada Sethu as the new companion. I'm actually very surprised they haven't publicly said anything yet, because over the past few years, especially with the 60th anniversary stuff, they were very careful to announce when there was public filming.
Yeah.
Like, they were making sure to stay on top of these announcements so the media wouldn't leak it. Like, they were making sure, like, okay, well, we're filming outdoors with David Tennant and Catherine Tate. We have to announce that they're coming back.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, well, we're filming outdoors with Shruti Gaba. We have to announce that he's the next Doctor. Like, they've been very careful with those announcements to be on top of it, of the announcement happens before it would get spotted by media. So, seeing in this case that there hasn't, even still now, because it's been several weeks since all this, they still haven't announced anything, and we have proof of Varada Sethu being the new companion or a new companion. It's rather surprising they haven't said anything yet.
I feel like they kind of haven't done that because it would be weird to announce that Millie Gibson is leaving before she has had her second episode. So I feel like it's just an issue where it's like, how do we say this without being weird about how quickly Millie Gibson is leaving?
I mean, they did, but they did announce that David Tennant and Catherine Tate were coming back, and then like a few weeks later, also announced Shruti Gott was playing the Doctor.
Yeah,
like sure they didn't announce David Tennant as the 14th Doctor at the time, but they did basically announce two Doctors kind of back to back. I guess.
I mean,
like,
it was kind of
you can announce that, like, you can announce that Varada Sethu is joining the TARDIS. You don't have to mention that Millie Gibson's leaving.
Yeah, they could do that. With David Tennant, though, like, they announced very specifically that he was coming back for the 60th. So, like, we knew he was a temporary thing anyways.
That's true.
I think the issue is just that, like, they don't want to do press about the second season that's coming next year when we haven't even gotten the first season. I think that's ultimately what the issue is.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's just a little unfortunate because it now, like, sets expectations a certain way.
Yeah. Now we know that she's going to be leaving.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like, now we know, she's not going to be sticking around as long as, like, Clara or Yaz or anything like that.
Yeah.
She's only really, her story's going to wrap up in one season for the most part.
Yeah.
I know some people were talking about how this also seems like, as you mentioned, like, tabloids are kind of getting a hold of it, of, there might be something malicious here because this kind of thing was happening when Millie Gibson's on vacation and not able to respond to what's going on. And it feels like a repeat of problems with Christopher Eccleston back in the day, where you're just not happy with it. But I feel like, obviously we don't know what's happening behind the scenes, but I think to avoid, toxic conversations about it, I think it really may just come down to what you're saying, of they don't want to do marketing for a whole season away and potentially officially giving away things from the first season. Because ultimately, who's going to look at the leaked set photos and all that? The people that want to know more and more, not the general audience.
Yeah.
But the general audience will probably look at an official announcement.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, like, I don't think there's anything ill-intended.
That kind of stuff did happen with, like, the specials, because we knew that Wilf was coming back several months before they said anything. Because there were set photos with him.
They technically never actually said anything about him until the specials aired, and I think that was because of his health, because they weren't sure just how much they were able to get with him.
Yeah, I know David Tennant did say at a con that, like, we filmed stuff with him.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm very happy they got to. That was still so good.
Yeah.
But I know it's so far off, and it's going to be so long before we learn anything about it, but the first public filming with Varada Sethu being set in the 1950s really, really makes me hope that she's from that era. Or that she's not from modern day.
It would be nice to have one companion in New Who that's not from modern day.
Mm-hmm. And not like a temporary companion. I mean, there was Jack and Nardole, who neither of whom were, present day people.
Yeah.
And they added something different to it. And it's been a very long time since we've had a companion that came from the past, specifically.
I mean, they almost did it with Clara, apparently, because Clara Oswin Oswald from Victorian London was almost supposed to be the companion. But then they changed that. It would have been very interesting to see that, I think.
It just adds a uniquely different perspective to the companion, because otherwise, the companion coming from modern day, there's a level of similarity to all of them in their first reactions. And I'm not saying it's bad. It's just a matter of, obviously, you want to make the companions relatable to the viewer. And when you have them all come from the same time period, there's only so much that you can do to make it a unique experience there, I guess.
I think it's like with Ian, Barbara, and Susan, it's nice that you have like two people from the modern day and then one person that's not. So it's like you get different perspectives there.
Yeah,
I feel like
if Ninth Doctor with Rose and Jack, for example, or 12 with Bill and Nardole.
Yeah, like how if in this, or if in the second season now, Ruby Sunday's there for part of the season, and then we have a new companion that's not from modern day. That would be a very good way to like lean into. First, you have this audience surrogate, and then now you're getting a different companion.
Yeah, no, that definitely would work really well. Actually, it's so interesting to look at the very first episode of Doctor Who, and now looking at the future. We past where we're even at right now. We're looking at like next year's stuff from filming. There's something that fits the time travel theme there. Yep. Man, I think to bring everything back a little bit here to the very first serial that we watched, I actually really liked An Unearthly Child, even though it definitely feels dated for the time.
Yeah.
There's something about it that just I liked and I clicked with immediately.
Yeah, I definitely I like this TARDIS team quite a bit. I think they're going to be interesting to be with for a bit. From what I remember, I think Susan leaves in the second season, so I think we're with these three for a whole season at least. Okay. And I think Ian and Barbara leave after her.
So we get quite some time with
I'm not sure, though.
So we got quite some time then. Actually, that does kind of check out with what the Adventure in Time and Space did. It seemed like Susan left first.
Yeah, but I haven't. I watched that 10 years ago, but I haven't rewatched it recently, so I only vaguely remember.
I rewatched it for the 60th, so yeah, that's fair. I rewatched it for the 60th.
Yeah,
so it's kind of fresh in my head.
I should watch that new version because they changed one scene. They have Shooty in there for a scene. They changed one scene,
and it looks edited. It's edited much better.
Yeah, he's not weirdly in front of the TARDIS console.
I mean, we mentioned how we'll be with this TARDIS team for a while, and I think that transitions us pretty well to what's going to be our episode 2 prep.
Yep.
So for our next episode here, it's going to be a bit longer. An Unearthly Child was a good start, and not too many episodes. But for episode 2, we're going to be watching the full serial of The Daleks, which is the next story. That's 7 episodes long.
It's a long one.
And we're also going to be adding The Edge of Destruction, which is only 2 episodes, and the story right after The Daleks. So we got 9 episodes to watch.
We got 2 weeks for it, though, so it's fine.
Yeah, we got 2 weeks for it. But it should be a good time. I think it'll give us a really good look at who each of these characters become. Because, I mean, at that point, we're well over 10 episodes into their run.
Yeah, so, and we get to see the introduction of the Daleks, which is interesting.
Yeah.
Get to see how they started.
That's going to be fun. I'm quite
It's very interesting how...
Because I know the Daleks
it's interesting
are
how
very different at the start compared to...
Pretty much like the primary antagonist of the show was introduced in the second serial. It's funny.
Yeah. Originally, I did not realize it was like this soon. I thought there was like a few stories in between. I didn't realize the Daleks were introduced so early.
Yeah.
But it makes sense why they're so intrinsically tied to the identity of Doctor Who. Because they're literally in the second story.
And I suppose next episode we could also talk about the missing serial that comes after Edge of Destruction. I think it's called Marco Polo. But like we can't watch it, obviously. But I will probably like look it up so we can talk about it a little bit. just so we know like what
Yeah.
happens there. Because yeah, all of the episodes are missing. Next episode we can talk about like why they're missing and stuff, and go over that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there might be quite a bit of that through
Yeah.
a lot of the early bits of Genesis of the Doctor here. We might have a lot of bits where we have to kind of look through recaps or animated recreations.
I'm kind of hoping that
read through summaries.
They did announce that the Celestial Toymaker is getting remade with animated stuff this year. So I'm kind of hoping by the time we get there, it's already done. Because, we just
that
got
would be nice, wouldn't
the
it?
Toymaker just came back. So it would be nice to see his first serial.
Yeah, it would.
If it comes out after, we'll just have to go back and watch it afterwards. Because that's definitely one. We don't want to miss that one, because we just met the Toymaker in Modern Who.
Yeah, that's definitely one worth going back to. And, there might be something special, too, about if we watch the serial originally, and then we also see the animated version and see, like...
only one episode
kind of thing.
Still exists as live action.
Well, of what we can.
Yeah.
Of what we can.
Because there's 4 episodes of it, and only one of them is still a thing in live action.
Yeah.
I think it's the 3rd episode in that one that we still have.
This is definitely going to be a fun journey. Now that we've properly started our journey here, we've been through an Unearthly Child. I'm excited for what's to come.
Yeah, me too.
Alrighty. Well, any closing thoughts here on an Unearthly Child, or any of the news that we talked about? Anything that you still want to go over, Joy?
No, I think we pretty much went over everything.
All right. Then I think with that, that's going to do it for episode 1 of Genesis of the Doctor. As a reminder, before next time, which we should be recording episode 2 on Saturday, February 24th, but obviously that may change. We'll post about it on social media.
Yeah.
Make sure to watch The Daleks and The Edge of Destruction before that next episode. You can find those serials on the BBC iPlayer, or, if you're in the UK, or for free on Tubi TV, which... Yeah, you got some ads, but I mean, you get to watch it for free. So
you can pay for BritBox if you want.
You can, you can pay for BritBox if you want. But
I'll
otherwise,
probably just use Tubi TV.
Yeah, say. Otherwise, if you want to support us on Patreon for just $1 a month, you'll gain access to our Discord, as well as early access to these episodes. I have been Triss. You can find me on social media at ToonTriss.
And I've been Joy. You can find me various places as Joy Content. On Twitter, it's Joy Content _. Most other places, just Joy Content.
And with that, we'll see you guys next time.
Bye.